So, okay, recording in progress. Good. Okay, so anyway, good morning. Still morning. Good morning, everybody. And my name is Robert Brand. And if you've never heard of me or seen me before, that's okay. But I have done probably, I'm going to say 45 seminars in your office in Alhambra over the last 30 years, but not, I don't think in the last maybe just a little while. But anyway, I talk about one topic only. It has to do with the number one source of litigation against residential agents in California. There's nothing anywhere close to it, so we can get into it. I will email to Ruben when I'm done some seminar notes from today, from this morning, and I revise them every couple of months. So about 5 pages of a Word document with just a lot of information on best ways to disclose and what to avoid and that sort of thing. I always like to give a shout out to Gov Hutchison whenever I speak. He's with Carr, of course, and he knows more about every aspect of real estate, I think, than any other one person that's actually in the training mode. So anyway, if you haven't seen him before or heard him, make sure you do. And back to what I said, the disclosure of the condition of the property has to do with the vast majority of lawsuits, only in California, by the way, against residential agents. And so that's my topic. I never, ever go over time. So at 12 noon, I will be done. And I have about 30 hours of material, so I can, Ruben can always invite me back for part 2 and part 3. Anyway, whoops, let me just back here. Okay, I'm sponsored by First American Home Warranty, First American NHD, and Legal Services of America. So we'll hear from them in just a few minutes. And let me start out with the visual inspection. And that is what's described in the AVID, and almost everybody uses the AVID. It's not a legally mandatory form, but it's an overwhelmingly popular form, and a lot of companies insist upon it. But it does say visual inspection. So when it comes to a visual inspection, the issue is, do we disclose things that we think are worthy of disclosure that we actually can't look at, can't see? And the answer to that question is actually, it's not limited to just visual observations. It really, even though the wording has stayed the same, the meaning of it has changed. And it really means, in today's real estate world, any sensory perception. So just 2 quick examples, and we'll hear from our sponsors. When it comes to, let's say you're at a 2-story home doing your AVID thing, either side of the deal. And as you're going upstairs, room to room with your AVID, and you crisscross the hallway, you get the feeling, maybe once or twice, that the floor may be a little bit uneven. Not very much, and you usually don't notice it at all. It's so slight. So you're done upstairs, you start going downstairs, you look at the floor from an angle there, and you a couple steps down, and you think, well, it looks pretty flat to me, but you have noticed something. It is a sensory perception, but it's not visual. So it would justify kind of a lightweight disclosure, like upstairs hallway floor appears to have some unevenness or something like that. Or let me back up with the other example. You're in the family room downstairs. There's a really, really heavy mildew smell, and you're wondering, well, how am I going to disclose this, or should I, or whatever? A lot of people in our business would probably say there's a very strong mildew odor or musty odor in this area. The problem, of course, is that mildew and musty are way too close to the words mold, so we don't want to ever say them, let alone write them down. So you got to say something, but you don't want to use any word that is similar to mold or mold itself. It's a very litigious word, and it's really outside of our standard of care. So better to say something like obvious odor noted or apparent. Just be careful of your wording, and a lot of this will be in the notes. So we're talking about any sensory perception, and the list can go on. As we go room to room doing our limited visual inspection of the property, comments that you might make in a particular room, in any room in the house, has to be either a defect and/or, I should say, a red flag, no other topics. So by way of definition, really simple, a defect is like a broken window. And if you see a broken window in the kitchen, that's the whole disclosure. It's better to just write down cracked window or broken window, not big crack, small crack, upper right corner crack. It's from the rock or the frisbee or somebody knocked too hard on the window or something. No cause, no details, just window is cracked or cracked window. That's all. Keep it as brief and as simple as you possibly can. You see a stain like this on the ceiling. A lot of people in our business would say, or they would write down, looks like there's maybe a large or whatever water stain in the ceiling. Well, we don't want to say water because stains can occur from a lot of different things. Rodent problem, white wine is stored in the attic and a bottle broke. It could be lots of different things. I don't know what it's from. Even if I have the listing and I'm best friends with the sellers and they've told me the story, I really still don't know on the real estate licensee side. So just stain noted, discoloration noted. It's not big, it's not small, it's not from water. Stay away from all that extra verbiage. There's no need to have it. There's no upside to having it. 2 quick challenges. And there's a lot of challenges. I'll just mention 2. You're in the living room. You can't find anything to say about it. No defects, no red flags. You want to say something because not all homes have a living room, and you want to establish that you were there in the living room. You notice a fan at the ceiling fan. Well, ceiling, and you write that down on the AVID. You may not, but a lot of people do. Well, a ceiling fan is not a defect or red flag. It's inventory. And we don't want to list inventory on the AVID or the TDS. If you start listing inventory in this room, you have to list it everywhere. So you never substitute a defect or red flag comment for inventory because you can't find anything to say. If you can't find anything to say, I'll get to that in just a moment. And just one more challenge, like a spider web. I look at lots of AVIDs, and a lot of people in our business will disclose something as small as or insignificant as a spider web. Well, it doesn't affect the value or desirability of the property. If a home is going, let me just say, for $725,000 and it's got a spider web or 2 or 10 of them in there, it doesn't affect the price. It doesn't affect value or desirability. It's too insignificant, and we don't want to get that petty. So we got to be careful of those things. The best expression, after talking about this for 3 decades, I've seen anywhere in the state of California, or everywhere in the state of California, I should say, anywhere and everywhere, is nothing noted. Make sure it's okay there. Make sure it's okay with Ruben. But you're in the living room. You look around adequately, which doesn't take long. You have nothing to say about it. No disclosure. Nothing noted works great. The only complaint I've ever heard about nothing noted is when a home is in super pristine condition and you've done a really great job with your AVID. You can't find anything to say about it. And there's I've got nothing noted, nothing noted, nothing noted. It looks like I wasn't even there. There's a really easy solution to that I'll get to in just a moment. So let's talk about our sponsors. And let's see, we have first up, Sandy. And now I hear an echo because you're on.
So I unmuted.
You're muted.
I'm unmuted now, right?
But you could be heard fine. So go ahead.
Maybe it's worth hearing twice. Who knows? Good morning, everyone. Sandy with First American Home Warranty. I've been doing this with Bob for a really long time now, and super important. Obviously, we all want to stay out of court or jail or whichever one you want to do. Take your pick. And I will tell you, the National Association of Realtors says when there is litigation involving a real estate transaction, the first 4 things that are asked for are the contract, disclosures, the home inspection report, and the home warranty. We all know the home warranty was created about 50 years ago in California to lessen the chance of after-sale issues, and it still stands true today. If the buyer has recourse or has an avenue, then that's what the home warranty is there to do. The sellers can't disclose every single thing that might possibly happen. Maybe if the sun comes out and it's Tuesday and they're facing east, who knows? Houses have stuff that happen, and a home warranty is to help them so that they don't go after the seller and say something wasn't disclosed. So protects not just the buyer, but it totally protects the seller as well. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'll put my info into chat. I'm going to mute so nobody hears an echo.
Okay, thank you very much, Sandy. Let's see. Okay, Brandon is here with First American NHD. So take it away and unmute, and we'll take a chance.
All right, are we echoing?
You're fine.
Perfect. All right, 2 for 2, Sandy. All right, so good to see you guys again. And just like Sandy said, we've been doing this with Bob for a long time, and why we love doing this, everything that he has to tell you is super helpful, and that's also where we come in as well. And I know we just did a class for you guys, but something that a lot of you don't know is that the natural hazard disclosure industry is unregulated, which means that we have a lot of companies that come in, they buy data from a third party, and then they just provide that disclosure report. And you might have seen some of these on the other end of the transaction. And what the dangers really are when it comes to that is, in a lot of cases, what we find is the city and county disclosures that we provide are a lot more in depth, and they supersede in a lot of ways the disclosures that come from the state, right? And then the reason being that they have a lot more resources when it comes to those disclosures. They're able to find everything down to the property level, where the state has just general areas. And so that's why it really does matter who you use for your NHD. And if you can negotiate to use our company in the negotiations, what you're getting is, one, we've never had a lawsuit when it comes to a improper disclosure. And the other thing, which is a great thing, and the other thing is that we have E&O insurance, and we have 3 times the average. The average is about 10 million in E&O. We have 30 million. But if we've never had to use it, really, that's the best thing. So when it comes to, if you have questions on any NHD report, I always offer this. We do have a licensed geological staff and a tax department that does calls with your clients. So if you have clients who have really specific questions, I always offer this up, that we can always do a conference call. So I hope everyone has a fantastic week, and it was great to see you guys last week. And I hope you guys enjoy Bob's amazing presentation.
And glad to have you aboard here. Great. First American is just a great source. Home warranty, obviously title, home warranty, NHD. It's just a phenomenal company. So thanks for your participation. And before I continue, Virgil is here with Legal Services of America. It's a phenomenal company, phenomenal service. Take it away, Virgil.
Thank you, Mr. Brand. Appreciate all your years of service to our industry. Hello, everyone there at Caldwell Banker George. It's an honor to be here. My name is Virgil Flores. I own Legal Services of America. We're located here in Rancho Murieta, California. Our company specializes in providing risk management for your buyer or seller. We now provide homeowners risk management to buyers and sellers. And what it does is it provides a lifetime of mediation after the close of escrow. So when there's a problem, you're not going to have to lose your good relationship with your client or your time or your money dealing with some unhappy buyer. We're going to be there to resolve these matters. And we are very good at it. I'm proud to tell you we have a success ratio of over 90% of preventing lawsuits from ever reaching our clients' errors and omissions insurance. Also, your client's going to receive unlimited legal advice. So when there's a legal question that could impede the transaction, we're not going to ask the agent to risk their real estate license. We're going to have a real estate attorney answer those questions and walk your client through to escrow. The last part of this is that we don't get paid until there's a successful closing. Our fee is a modest fee that's paid for one time through from the proceeds of the transaction, and many of our clients are using this as a compelling marketing tool. My name is Virgil Flores. I'll put all my information in the chat room. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Virgil. Great service and phenomenal. To everybody, a lot of the problems that I'm talking about start after closing, and the buyers and sellers get into a problem. Buyers are dissatisfied with the condition of the home, and that's where legal services steps in with a mediator. Let me back up, with a mediator to come and resolve it, and they resolve it virtually every time, and it never ends up in court. So great for that. That's great information. Thank you. And you can all look in the Zoom. If you're online, I know many of you are there in person, but it's being recorded, and information on our sponsors will be in the chat area. Okay, back to pristine home. Can't find anything wrong. You got a bunch of nothing noteds. Here's a way to resolve that problem, so it will never give the impression that you weren't there, although we all know you're always there. Here in Southern California, actually the whole state, the exceptions being like Lake Arrowhead or Big Bear, Yosemite or somewhere, most homes overwhelmingly have what we would call stucco siding on the left, you see there, and then concrete or cement, walkways, driveways, poolside, whatever. If you ever make a comment on the siding on the left, drop the word stucco in your disclosure, but it looks kind of like that. I think we would all agree that none of us have ever seen a home with these surfaces that are all over the place, crack-free. They're often very minor little hairline cracks. One expression you never want to use would be like normal settling cracks noted in driveway. You don't want to say normal. Settling is a term only to be used by structural engineers and soils engineers, and sometimes licensed architects, but never us. But you're going to see these conditions here and there, and I'll have this in the notes, so you don't have to remember it. But this is a great disclosure that would fit 99.9% of properties in California. Some cracks noted at exterior siding, and then either backyard patio or driveway or walkways or whatever. You're not saying it's a problem. You're not saying the cracks are huge. You're not overwhelmed by it. It's just in observation. And this is when you really haven't been able to find anything else to say. You can always write that down. And by the way, I love the word some, because if you're talking about some cracks in the driveway and you have a really picky buyer involved, and you said 3 cracks in the driveway, they can come back to you and say, no, actually there's 5 if you count them, and nobody's going to argue with the word some. It's just a better way to express it. You're wondering, where do I write it down on the form? Well, there's other places on the transfer disclosure statement, but if you're, and the AVID, but this is great. Other observed or known conditions not specified above. That's a nice catch-all when you can't find any other place exactly where to put it. And that's just a good kind of at the end of the form place that a lot of us don't even know is there. Okay, moving. I have hours and hours and hours of material. I just hit a bunch of primary concern issues in risk management. This is stating the obvious. You have the buyers. You are showing them a property, and you're showing them this property that's kind of on the right side. Well, you can't miss the fact that there's a school across the street. The buyers cannot miss that. They may say later, I never noticed. I was really absorbed in the house looking at that, and that's fine. But you can't miss the school. And if they buy this home, they are going to have certain things occur, like there'll be gridlock parking-wise or car-wise for drop-off and pickup of the students. Sometimes people that live nearby complain that their driveway is blocked in the morning and afternoon. Some people even park in the driveway, up the driveway, believe it or not. So they're going to have that. They're going to have bells ringing for school, for class change and basketball practice and, football games and all that stuff that goes on at schools. Now, you may say, I've shown them the home, once or maybe 3 times, whatever. You can't miss the fact that there's a school there. It doesn't make any difference. There could be a Walmart there and we still have to let them know. The way we let them know is very important. I'll get to that. Let me just do 2 or 3 more examples, and I'll give you what I think is the key to doing this right. Obviously, let's see if you're in Alhambra, if you get on the 10 or make it to the 10 and go west, you'll kind of pass this area on the way to, the west side of LA. Home here, over the hedge, you got the on-ramp. It's hard to get any closer to a freeway. So whoever lives here is going to have a noise issue. The issue doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. They may like it. They may think it's background noise. But if you mention there's going to be noise from the freeway, there are going to be gasoline fumes, if that bothers them. Well, there's also going to be diesel fumes. That's a different thing. And that could bother them. And tires that blow off of a truck and fly off the freeway. The point is, you can never make a list of things that may bother somebody, because all they have to do, or their attorney needs to do, is find something that bothers them or supposedly bothers them that is not on the list, and then they go after you for that. And the solution's coming in a minute. Just one more photo. Shopping center. I'm very familiar with this shopping center. There's been some litigation with the houses up above. It's a big shopping. It's about a half a mile long. I checked it with my car odometer. There's a Target and, a couple of big box stores. So people that live up here or buy a home up here, you see they've got a nice view and all, and beautiful homes. But some of them have said, I knew there's a shopping center there. I could see it over the back fence. I just didn't know it was going to be, there's going to be noise coming from it 24 hours a day, because like Target closes at 8 or 9 or whatever. The reality is, in a sizable shopping center, there are deliveries 24 hours a day. So there's the big 18-wheeler trucks, and when they back up, you get the beep, 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 beep noise, which is kind of loud, and you got forklifts chugging along, all kinds of things. So you think, well, I can't make a list of what's going to bother them. What do I write down? There's going to be car alarms going off. There's going to be the trucks making deliveries. You just can't name them all, because all they have to do, or their attorney, is go after you for something that you forgot to mention. So let's figure this out. First of all, yes, disclose things that are obvious, no matter how many times they've seen, a buyer has seen something, and no matter how obvious it is. When disclosing something near the property, the best thing to do, and I'll give you some examples, is to disclose what is there, not the details of what may bother the buyers about what is there. So, for example, there is a freeway near the house. When the buyers move in, whether they complain about the noise or the gasoline fumes, let's say we wrote those two things down, and they come at you with their attorney helping them, saying, oh, it's not the noise, it's not the gasoline fumes, it is the diesel fumes, and you didn't mention that. So when you do it this way, when you just tell them what's there, and you are charged with not telling them about the diesel fumes or the gas fumes or whatever, the answer is, well, no, I did disclose that. There's a freeway near the house. So everything that happens on a freeway is going to affect a home that's this close to it. Same thing with the school. There is a school near or close to this property, meaning anything and everything that happens at schools will be part of the buyer's life if they're that close to it. Again, if you make a list, if there's a coyote problem in the neighborhood, and you want to tell your buyers who have a cat or a small dog, look, they're from Chicago. We have an animal here called a coyote. You got to be careful. This is what it looks like. Well, maybe it's not a coyote that gets them. It's a black widow spider, or it's a rattlesnake. I don't know, but you can't make a list of things. So you don't want to make a list. Let's go back to the supermarket or the shopping center and homes above it or near it. How about a shopping center is located behind this property? Meaning anything and everything, that nighttime deliveries, trucks backing up, making the beep, beep, beeps, everything that happens at a shopping center is going to be part of your life. And you don't want to make a list of things, because the buyers, if they're clever enough, or their attorney, will come up with something to go after you for. that's not on the list. But everything, if you make a 100-item list, is in that disclosure. It's because there's a shopping center there. So better way to go. All right, should you disclose wear and tear items? Those are kind of the minor things that are kind of like, well, you know, do I really want to mention them and that sort of thing? And I'll give you my thought or my opinion on that. Wear and tear stuff like scuff marks and carpets dirty and all of that. And the answer is usually there is no disclosure for these observations. And that's because they're everywhere. If a home's like 6 months old or older, you're going to find some wear and tear. These are things that do not affect the value or desirability of the property. They are present in every property. There's nothing unique or special about them. So once you start disclosing things that are that minor, you have to disclose all of them. And buyers that are reading, they're looking at the TDS and they're looking at the AVID and they're trying to find out, what am I getting into? They really want to know. There can be so many disclosures that they can't find a thing that may bother them. They're overloaded, and they're overloaded with things that don't need to be disclosed, like the things I'm talking about here. So there's way too much information in the AVID. We go into addendums, and even conscientious buyers who really want to know, you know, what may bother me about the property, they can't find the meaningful disclosure because there's just too much written. Now, I'm going to really date myself with this little puzzle here, this game. But if you're old enough, you remember this. Maybe it's still around. It's a game called Where's Waldo? Waldo is a guy somewhere in the picture that has a red and white striped shirt and hat. And the game is try to find him. Well, if I do this, you can see where he is really easily. But if, by the way, I'm sorry to say, I saw him the other day. He's been arrested for some crime. Only kidding. Okay, so it's quite an outfit there. So anyway, there's Waldo. That is symbolizing, or he is the significant disclosure that we really need buyers to know. Either side of the deal, we want the buyers to know. If they know about it in advance, they're not going to sue over it. But they can't find it, or they can't find Waldo or the because we have too much wear and tear stuff in there, and that doesn't need to be disclosed. And so buyers just get frustrated, and they end up not reading about the slant in the floor or something that really may make a difference to them. So be careful about that. I also get asked about, and by the way, if you have any questions, first of all, I'll just make an offer. You can, well, you can call me, but it's better to email, because when I answer a disclosure question, and there's no cost whatsoever, when you email me with a disclosure question, then I can copy in your management so they know what I'm saying and all that, make sure it's in line with company policy, which it 99% of the time is. But you can ask a question in the chat area, and I'll try to take a peek at it as I go along. And if it's a question on this topic, I can probably answer it. So you know, keep that in mind before we finish. Okay, taking photos. Companies do have different policies on this. I'll tell you my opinion. Make sure you go with Coldwell Banker George policy. But the Glide platform, or whatever you call it, with zip forms has made it very easy to take photos. Now, if you're really old like me, or even near like me, you might remember taking a camera to a visual inspection to take a picture or two. I'm not talking about advertising, I'm talking about disclosure. Or then eventually a disposable camera. And then now we all have a phone, you know, with a camera on it and all that. That they're everywhere. So we always have our phone with us, most of us. So it makes it easy to take pictures. But the fact that it's easy to take photos during a visual inspection doesn't mean that we should. You know, it does say on the form what we should do. We're doing a visual inspection. You notice it doesn't list any kind of equipment here. You need to have binoculars. I've seen agents who come to, like when I do an in-person thing, they'll bring like a drone, those little helicopter things that fly around. So why do you have it? I use it in my visual inspection. Why? Well, I can fly up to the roof and I can see on the camera what the top of the roof looks like. I can't see it from the driveway. I say, if you can't see it from the driveway or the backyard, you have no responsibility for it. So if you bring extra equipment, it's not only no longer just a visual inspection, just standing there looking at it. You have equipment, and there's a lot of other gadgets that people bring, levelers and different things to make sure the patio's level and all that, way outside of our standard of care. So we have to be careful. We just do a competent and diligent visual inspection. If you take photos, you can never have enough of them to satisfy everybody. The only exception that I know of, because I'm not a big fan of taking pictures during the AVID deal, is when there's one room, like in this case, it's the garage. It's obviously a huge mess. Take a long time to clean that one up. And you just want to have a record of what it looked like, because you're not going to include this. You're going to have the wording I have in the notes. You may come up with something better. It's something like extensive personal belongings, preventative visual inspection of, in this case, the garage. But that's the only picture you have. And that's even arguable if you should even have that. But I don't see a problem with that, just not room to room to room. So visual inspection, not a big fan of taking photos because it's starting to expand our standard of care. We're really just doing a visual walk around inspection, but now we're bringing photography into it. Some agents record conversations during the visual inspection. Now we're bringing that into it, and we keep just adding layers of liability that don't need to be there. Now here is I always like to cover this. This part will be very brief. This is taking a rough draft disclosure that you're not exactly sure if it's worded just right, and turn it into a final disclosure like in a minute or two. So I'll use myself as an example. Let's say I'm at, oh, by the way, there's no cost to the technique. You don't have to download anything. Takes like a half a minute or something. So I have got the buyers. We have a deal. I'm doing my AVID. And by the way, I'll see if I can squeeze this in. Make sure on the listing side, you can do the AVID just about any time because you have access to the house usually. On the buyer side, when you now have a transaction, you want to do your limited visual inspection anytime, but when the home inspector is there, preferably, very much preferably before the home inspector is there, because in court, they will look at your AVID, see what the date and time is. They will look at the home inspection report and see what date. And it's very important that your date is an earlier date than the home inspection report, because that proves you did your AVID without the distraction of what the home inspector was doing. I'll touch on that more before we go. But anyway, let me just back up. I've done upstairs. I've done all the downstairs. My last stop is the kitchen. I kind of want to get out of there before the sellers return from their errands. And the last and only thing I see is on the wall to the left of the refrigerator, a couple of stains like this. I'm thinking, well, I should mention that, this looks like, it could be a mold thing. There could be a big mold infestation behind the wall. I don't know. I don't need to know, but it is something I want to disclose. But how am I going to word it? How am I going to word it? Well, I don't want to stand there for 15 minutes deliberating. So I set the AVID aside, or on my iPhone or personal computer, whatever, or iPad, whatever, set it aside. So you don't have the AVID. Let me find one here on my desk, a piece of paper, like a Post-it note or something, and write down whatever you want to, but you're not writing it down on the AVID. For me, I'd probably write down, there are 2 small black mold stains noted. Now that's not on the AVID, but I'm done. I can leave. I take off. I leave the property. Later in the day, I'm in my home office or my car office or office. I take that out, that little note, and I start to cross out every word I can such that it still makes sense in the English language. I don't have to say 2 or small, black. I never want to write down the word mold. So no numbers, no colors, no adjectives, and never mold or mildew or musty. All I have left over is stains noted, and that's an ideal disclosure. Then I write that down on the AVID. It didn't hold me up at the house. I got out of there without having the seller interaction, which is good not to have. And I've got an ideal disclosure here. So that's rough draft to final. It just takes a minute or two. This is a good example. Here in Southern California, well, it's different in the central and northern, but I live in Southern California like you do. So I think it's the Vons stores have this express lane sign. We've all seen that before. Most of us use it because in real estate, in our business, we're in a hurry a lot. I've never seen a fight break out in the express lanes cash register area. I've seen some close calls. It's usually guys, and some guy will say to the guy in front of him, hey, I counted the things in your shopping cart there. You have 18 items. And the sign says 15 or fewer. Never seen like a boxing match, but pretty close. If you go to a Ralph's, this is what you'll see. Most of them anyway. It's about 15 items. That's just brilliant. Nobody's arguing now because the guy that say, hey, I counted 18. The person he's talking to could say, well, 18 is about 15. That's what the sign says, about 15. So it's a much better way to word it. And we want to use the same principle in disclosure. We want to be accurate, cite the condition we see, but write it in such a way that disclosure is provided, but it's not easy to argue about our wording. Good thing to keep in mind. I was going to look at the chat room. I'll just do this. I'll do it one more time to see if there's any messages, and no, don't see any. So here is why we do not want to do our AVID at the same time as when the home inspector is there. It can be convenient, but the downside of this far outweighs the convenience of doing it. Home inspectors have a higher standard of care than we do, much more rigorous. Believe it or not, they get sued more often than real estate agents do in California. By the way, I'll just add this in. Keep in mind that the state of California does not license home inspectors. There are none in California. 34 states license them, but we're not one of those states. So if you have a buyer and you like to recommend that they get a home inspection, which is a good idea, never say I recommend you obtain the services of a licensed home inspector or whatever. There are no licensed home inspectors in our state. You can say a qualified home inspector, professional home inspector, just not licensed. But anyway, they have a higher standard of care than we do. They actually get sued more often than real estate agents do, believe it or not. They look in areas that we don't. Like in the picture, a lot of them look under like a kitchen sink. And a lot of agents do too, but there's plenty of real estate firms, they don't want their agents getting down on the floor and looking behind the cupboards and all that sort of a thing. Well, they go up in the attic and we don't. If it's a climbable roof, we don't go up there. We don't open up the electrical panel and do some sort of testing. We don't do that either. So they just do more things than we do, and they get sued more often. So if we follow them around, we may see things that we normally wouldn't see. And now we're responsible for disclosing them. And there's a lot of other ramifications that are not good. So anyway, let's say I can get out there, deal comes together today, Wednesday, home inspection's I don't know what day I said, let's say it's going to be on Monday of next week. I want to get out there before my buyers do, by myself. The seller's going to be home, of course, but not with my buyers. I just want to do my AVID. I don't want to do my AVID when the home inspection's going on. I don't want to do my AVID when the buyers are with me. I want some time alone, even if there's other people in the house, but by myself to do that AVID. And here in the master bedroom, just from this photo, I don't see anything to disclose. If it was a tile floor and there was a throw rug there, I wouldn't move the throw rug. I don't move things out of the way as a real estate licensee in California. And there is no way I'm going to take that painting, flower painting, off the wall and look behind it. It's outside of my standard of care. Maybe behind it is something like this, and that looks pretty bad, looks kind of like a moldy thing. I wouldn't never say that out loud, but it looks pretty bad. But I don't see it. I have no responsibility for that. Barring any other red flags that may be there, like all kinds of cracks or something, no responsibility for that. I'm not going to be disclosing it. So I'm staying within my standard of care. But if I'm doing it at the same time as the home inspector, my AVID, and I happen to be in that room, or I'm accused of being in that room, when he pulls that painting off the wall to look behind it, which he's supposed to do, but we're not supposed to do that. Well, now I've seen something that I have to be very careful about disclosing, could come back to haunt me. I have increased my liability completely unnecessarily. So just to wrap up this little part of it, and we'll go for about 12 more minutes here. Always complete the AVID prior to the home inspection. Do never ever delay the visual inspection because of pending repairs. That's happening more and more in our market, where to get the deal done, rather than just sellers picking whoever has the best offer, which is the common way of doing it nowadays, and not just the best offer, but is anybody asking for repairs, that kind of thing. So repairs scheduled or not, agreed to or not, you do your visual inspection, may I suggest, as soon as you can. Usually repairs that are done do not affect the content of the AVID. They're in the electrical panel and we don't go in there. They're at the top of the roof, shingles missing, and we don't go up there. Then I've done my AVID. I have the date on it, time in, time out. Also, days later, when the home inspector's there, and you want to have your buyers there if it's humanly possible, then attend, you sit it out, go to the family room or something and get some work done. Don't follow anybody around. You've already done your AVID. You've done it by yourself within your limited standard of care without seeing things that the home inspector is going to call out, and you're not supposed to call them out because it's not part of what you do. So several good reasons to absolutely prove you didn't do your AVID. They just look at the dates. You did your AVID on April 4th. The home inspector was there on April 10th. That shows them you weren't there. So let me scan down through here and see. Oh, let me do the no adjectives thing. That's good. And it's quick too. Here we go. Make sure when now I'm not talking about advertising. Advertising has almost no litigation, even here in California, but disclosure does. So when you're writing a disclosure on the AVID, on the TDS, in the letter, in a text or whatever, we want to keep it short and simple. And we don't ever want to use adjectives. They're all very litigious. So words like small or large, fair, poor, colors, numbers, like water, let me combine some of these. There's a large water stain in the living room ceiling. We don't want to say large, that's debatable. We've already gone through this in the other picture I showed you. Stains can occur from a lot of things other than water. I don't know. Even if I've heard a story, that's a story. I haven't seen what happened. I just see that there's discoloration. And maybe it's wet to the touch. I just never get off of water because I don't know what it is. And then anything related to mold, a fragrance that you pick up, if I can use that term, seeing something, handling something, if you think it's moldy, we don't want to write down the word mold or moldy or moldish, and just some adjectives to stay away from. So I'll skip the picture now. We have like the term settling cracks that you'll see on a lot of AVIDs, surface cracks, hairline cracks. You know what the answer is? Cosmetic cracks, expansive crack. What do we write down? Cracks. That's it. Just leave it there. Don't put the settling, don't put the big, upper right corner, lower left, just cracks. If there's more than one, some cracks noted in patio. If the crack is literally, let me get in the camera here, this wide, there's a different level to go to, I cover in the notes, but just the normal looking cracks, we just have to be careful. We don't want to write down normal either. Just some cracks noted in patio is usually what takes care of it. So let's do a big mistake and a poor word choice in this disclosure. 3 large settling cracks noted near mold stain above fireplace. We got so much wrong with this, and it's really easy to clean it up. We want to get 3. We don't use numbers. We don't use large. We don't know if it's from settling. It could be from shrinkage of building materials, not just settling, it could be from a lot of things, just drainage off the property. So we have 3 large settling. We got to have cracks noted near. Well, we don't want to say mold stain because it may not be mold or mildew stain. We don't need to say it, so why write it down? So we just get rid of that word. And we have cracks noted near stain above fireplace, period. Ideal disclosure without getting into verbiage that's too much, and we can get in trouble for it. Okay, let me find out what let's see here. You don't look at this, you're going to get dizzy. Well, let me just mention this real quickly. This is an important thing. You know, there's an expression in our industry. Some agents use it for themselves. I am a full service real estate agent. The question is, what are we doing that makes us full service is a great term, and a lot of people use it, but what does that mean in terms of what you're doing? Well, there's a lot of them. Just for time's sake, I'll just mention that some that are okay. As a real estate agent licensee, assisting a seller with properly pricing their home, assisting buyers in finding the right place for them. A couple more, so you know where I'm going. Consulting about determining the list price on the listing side, negotiating offers, and I think I just have 2 more. Helping clients find the best service providers, and then forms and paperwork assistance, and on and on and on. And let's get into this topic here. And by the way, a lot of terms, you know, you can say professional, there's a lot of terms you can use, but we want to be known for maintaining our standard of care as a real estate licensee, meaning we're not doing things that are not in that charter, so to speak. So here's the deal. You know, a lot of us in real estate are very friendly people, and we may have at our home. Let's take the upper right corner. That's a machine that cleans wood floors. So we have a listing. Open house is coming up in a couple of weeks. And they have a lot of like wood floors or wood appearing floors. You think, well, in my garage, I'm telling the buyers, I got a machine. I hardly ever use it. I've used it a few times. It does wonders. It cleans, you know, vinyl floors and wood floors. So we're going to have an open house next weekend. And let's say it's like today. I know you're going to Palm Desert for a little vacation or somewhere for a couple of days and all of that. So while you're gone, I'm going to, you know, I got a key to the house. If it's okay with you, I'll come in and I'll spruce up the floors. So very generous offer, very nice. It's just not something we should do. The only thing we should do are things that are described in the standard of care for a real estate licensee. Otherwise, we don't want to do them. Just 2 quick stories for sake of time. This is, I think, in Central California, like Merced, Modesto, Stockton. Same scenario. I've got the agents, I got this machine. I've never used it but a couple of times. The floors need some attention. I'll just run this over them. Yeah, well, you know, treat them, whatever. Not a good thing to say. It's got nothing to do with being a real estate licensee. There's additional liability that's not necessary. Well, in this particular case, the agent did this when the seller's returned from vacation for a couple of days, and they were going to hold an open house the coming weekend. This is what the floors look like. There was just excessive water coming out of it, and the agent who was using this was only a second time using it, and he didn't know how to do the water thing, and it just messed up the floors. So they actually terminated their relationship with them, and there was money that had to be spent that they kind of split to get the agent and the former client to get the bills paid for the craftsman. Also, you see this patio where it looks kind of like, now I'm talking to you, I would never say this to a client, kind of like a greenish moldy thing. I would never use those words in front of a client. And there's positively no way I'd ever write them down. That's 2 days in court. Just those 2 words. You never get off the stand. They just drive you crazy. So because we can't identify mold and all that stuff. That's a industrial hygienist or environmental engineer. But you see this kind of in the forefront here. Yeah, I see your like clay brick or whatever tile patio's got a lot of this discoloration. Discoloration is a good word, by the way. While you're out of town or someday when you're, away from the home, I got this machine. I can take care of it for you. Really, really kind thing to offer. It's just not a proper thing to offer in a real estate transaction. There's too much liability. And what'll happen sometimes is the neighbors come over after the buyers move in and they're meeting, they're in the living room talking, and the buyer said, we just love this house. And the Mr. Buyer, somebody says, oh, by the way, since we're right here in the living room and there's the sliding glass door to the patio, and the patio is like you see in the photo here. I don't know if they told you, but when it rains hard, the water builds up and it goes into the living room or wherever I said. And that's when things start. So you got to be careful. You could say a patio needs attention, patio surface needs attention. I'll have some other things in the notes to help you with that. Let me skip over the danger part and let me just check to see if there are any just a minute here, any more or any questions at all. No, I don't see any. So let me wrap this up because I always like to stop on time. If you have any questions that relate to anything and everything regarding disclosure, and there's absolutely no money in this. I jokingly say you can send me an In-N-Out burger coupon, but I'm only kidding. You don't have to do that. There's no charge at all. You can call me anytime. Better to email me. My email's in the chat room and it'll be on the notes. You can ask me a disclosure question. I'll copy your management in so they at least know what I'm saying to you. So that you're always welcome to do that. I'll get the notes to Ruben within 10 minutes. But my thanks to sponsors, to First American Home Warranty. I don't have the symbol here, but First American NHD, Brandon with Natural Hazard Disclosure, Sandy with the home warranty side, Virgil with Legal Services of America. So thank you very much for being here. And Ruben, if you get a good response, invite me back in a few months and I'll do a part 2. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Bob. If you can send me a bullet point of the topics that you cover, so that way maybe we can spread it out,
Yeah.
I know
Okay.
I know we discussed the AVID more than anything today, but
Right.
I'm sure there's educating the agents is the most important thing,
Right. Exactly. I'll do that. And have a great rest of the day. Oh, go ahead.
Also, the notes for today, you're going to be emailing that to me?
Yeah, just in a few minutes. Yeah.
Oh, I do have a question here. How
Sure.
to say driveway cracks repair with cement? Just cracks, right?
I just say some cracks noted. First of all, that's a great question. An agent never wants to use the word repair because some cracks, for example, are treated, but the treatment, whatever they did, didn't really repair anything. So repair is a really dangerous word. It just avoided completely. Or like there was a crack in the wall and somebody got some material to kind of cover it over or whatever. And they say it's been repaired. It hasn't been repaired, it's just been covered up. So I never use the word repair. I would just say some cracks noted, that's all, because
So-
there's still cracks. But not big, not small, and not repaired.
So just to reiterate, just stay away from adjectives and just
Absolutely.
disclose the obvious, right?
Disclose the obvious, right? Exactly. In the fewest possible words you can.
All right. Do we
right.
have?
Bob, Robert,
Yeah.
this is Peter Kim. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Last couple of days ago, I was having a discussion with Ruben, and we were wondering if there is a kind of a homicide investigation in the neighborhood, one of the property that is situated in. Do you have the duty to disclose?
Yeah, if there has been a major crime like a homicide and it is close to the property, now
Mhm.
close, if it's several blocks away, and by the way, there's no number of feet or yards that determines what's close. So, but if it's like you're on a cul-de-sac, the home property's on a cul-de-sac and 3 or 4 streets over cul-de-sac, that's where it occurred. There's no disclosure. Something that's probably just within a few doors of the actual property. It's fairly close, so you can see they could see the police activity and so forth. But if it was a killing, if somebody has died, whether it's from natural causes or a crime, regardless of who's responsible for the crime, it does need to be disclosed. The length of time varies, and I'll tell you what I'll do. I will modify a little bit of what I have in my notes about that specific subject
Mhm.
so the agents will be able to see it. But the crime's got to take place near the home, and that's kind of like what's near. But it's got to be, I don't know if it's more than, I'm just going to guess, like more than a dozen houses away, probably not.
Yeah.
But
Oh, it
yeah.
does have a statute of limitation of 3 years as well.
Yeah, 3 years on the death disclosure.
Yeah, right.
But if it's like somebody's grandmother died in the home, that's one thing. But if it's a famous person
Mhm.
who died, then or lives there, then that's they're still alive, but they're well known. They're a movie star or somebody like that. Well, like a good example, who was that huge house in Alhambra, that record producer guy?
Yeah, I still
Yeah, that went to prison. I think he's passed
yeah.
away. Yeah, obviously that would be disclosed if you're anywhere near there. That's quite a unique property. But after 3 years, there's usually no more disclosure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all
And
right.
you don't mind us calling you for any
Anything at all.
questions? Any
Yeah, anytime.
Okay, good.
And if management calls me, I can talk to. If it's an agent in the office, if they email me, then I can answer them and I can copy you in, Ruben in. I can do that kind of thing. Okay.
Sounds good.
Bob,
All right.
Okay.
Hi,
Yeah.
Bob, do you have time for a couple of quick questions?
I do.
Okay, the first question is, in relations to a septic, a propane tank that's being leased, if it was disclosed on the MLS, but no other form, is that good enough for the agent?
Yes, good enough, because there's no reason to think it's defective. It's outside of the agent's standard of care.
Perfect.
Right.
Question number 2 for an agent that's here in our training room. During a home inspection, obviously we detour the agents to not, follow the inspector and let him do their job and stuff. But if the homeowner, the home buyer is actually present as well, what do you recommend or do in that case? Because obviously the home buyer is going to want to tag along and make sure he's getting a good deal.
Great. They can tag along all they want. The agent has already done his or her AVID, so they're done with that. The home inspector is doing a totally different type of inspection. It's like when the termite guy is there, the agents aren't obviously not going up in the attic or anything like that. It's a separate and distinct thing, but the buyers, unhindered, can do, Phil Spector was the name of the guy. Yeah, I saw a note. The buyers can do anything they want. It's always best that they not tag along too close I remember a home inspector told me he was looking in a master bathroom and there were 6 family members in there with them. He just couldn't even move. But, but they can do anything that they want to do. The buyers, it's better for the agent to sit it out. You've already done the AVID. Go in the family room or somewhere and sit on the sofa and get some work done.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. That answers her question. The last question I have is related to the topic that Peter brought up. If there is a situation that occurred in a neighborhood, just so I know, so I can educate agents in the future, that could perhaps affect the marketability of the property, but it did not happen on the actual premises of the property that's being sold. And it was disclosed to the agent. Does the agent have an obligation to disclose that to the potential buyer?
So if you mean like, let me give an example. Generally, the answer would be no, but let me give an example. Like, now this is going to be a positive thing. There was a movie that Steve Martin was in called Father of the Bride. That house, and it's a real house. It's not on a back lot somewhere. It's on El Molino Avenue in Pasadena, just, right next to Colorado Boulevard. That is if you've seen the movie or the movies and you see that house, you know it's from that movie. And there's always people in front of that house. It's a stigmatized home. It's a positive stigma. It's a nice movie. But any home that's near it, and I would say 10 doors to the left and the right and across the street, there just has to be a disclosure that this is a stigmatized home. It was used in a motion picture, and it's, a half a block away or something. Now, that's a positive thing. If it's something that's more negative, like a crime was committed or a murder scene, it all depends on how close it is to the property. And generally speaking, if it's more than like around a 16th of a mile away, that's just not a legal term, it's just in terms of practice, a 16th to an eighth of a mile away, there's no disclosure because the house is not close enough to the client or the subject property to make a difference. I'm not sure if I answered that well.
Yeah.
And by the way, if somebody's buying a home, I know that Phil Spector's former house that's, kind of up high, any home that's like around that, the base of that, there would be a disclosure, even though I think he's passed away, there's still be a disclosure because people will find out where that is and they'll go want to look at it.
Thank you. That does help, especially in areas that, like, for instance, it could be an isolated situation where, a murder occurred, but
Right.
has never occurred in the past 10 years, but that would
Yeah.
have to be disclosed, right?
Yeah, if it's a murder, if it's high profile, if it's a famous movie star, if John Wayne was killed in a house, that would go on forever. But if it's like one of us, a regular citizen, it wouldn't be continued to be disclosed for 10 years. There's no number of years, but if it's, I would personally, if it's been, if the person's like across the street that passed away, after a year or two, it wouldn't require disclosure because people, elderly people die in homes all the time and there'd be disclosures everywhere, and that's not necessary.
Right. All right, perfect. And then one last question on chat for Camellia. And I think I know this question, but do we need to specify a septic tank on an AVID if it's visual, right?
No, no, because a septic tank is just inventory. It's just what they have on the property. It's not defective. It's not a red flag. There's no disclosure for it in terms of on the AVID.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that concludes. Any further questions for Robert? All right. Well, I thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob,
Thank you.
for the session.
Thank you,
It was
Bob.
very informative.
Okay.
And we'll send that out as soon as I get it from Bob.
Okay. I'll get it out right away. Thanks, everybody. Have a
All
great
right.
day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.